Hi, everyone. This is Jena Griffiths of Earth School. I have with me on the line Richard Unger of the International Institute of Hand Analysis. Today we're talking about hand shape. Welcome, Richard.
Hello, Jena, and everybody else who's listening.
So, Richard, you've been working quite a lot on hand shape and have come up with a very elegant system. Would you like to tell us a bit about it?
Yes, and it's not that so much that I've come up with an elegant system. Hand readers throughout the years have attempted to look at hands and put them into different categories. It would be so useful if hands just easily fell into a few categories. And d'Arpigné in the 1820s, a French hand reader, was the first fellow to accomplish this. And almost every palmistry book, at least every palmistry book in the Western world for the next 150 years, had pictures of d'Arpigné's 7 archetypes. Unfortunately, it's really hard to find those archetypes, really hard. I memorized the pictures, I looked at hands, couldn't find any hands that matched, and at the beginning, I figured it was me doing a bad job of hand reading. But as I figured out later, those hand shapes are barely around at all anymore. And Benham wrote a really big book on hand reading and didn't use d'Arpigné's system. He had his own. Fred Gettings had his own system of putting hands into 4 categories: earth, air, fire, and water. Fred Gettings was an astrologer, so earth, air, fire, water was right up his alley. And all that I've done is cherry-picked amongst the different hand readers and taken pieces of what they've done and tested them out, and the pieces that worked I used. And so I used the Jupiter type, the Saturn type, the Apollo type, and Mercury type from Benham. I used the earth, air, fire, water type of Fred Gettings. I used the philosophic and the conic types from d'Arpigné. And what I do is I blend them together. I will take a hand that has a dominant Jupiter finger and a hand that is an air hand, and I'll make that into an archetype, and that's the one I'm going to talk about first with you, the one Jupiter plus air, which is big ideas. So all I've really done is blended together pieces of systems that other people have developed, and each of the systems is useful to a point, but then it breaks down. You can spot the earth, air, fire, water hand shape in maybe half the hands. It's really easy to spot. The other half the hands, it's much more complicated hands, so too homogenized, too mixed. You can spot Jupiter, Saturn, Apollo dominant, like Benham would do, but maybe half the time, it's too messy. It's hard to pick one. But if you have a variety of different hand shape systems and you know how these hand shapes combine and you have names for the archetypes, as one of my Texas therapist students used to say, name it and claim it. Once there's a name for it, it's going to be so much easier to spot. So I've been indexing my handprints. I've been moving my thousands and thousands of handprints from hard copy into digital copy into my computer over the last 4 years. And as I've been doing this, which, by the way, has made it easier for me when I move, I don't have to move 50 boxes of 3-ring binders with handprints. Just have to move the computer and the backup disk. Quite a upgrade in ease. As I've done that, I've been looking at all the handprints and putting them into these different categories and creating slideshows so that students who don't read near as many hands as me can go ahead and look at 10 examples of big ideas, 10 examples of Red Queen, et cetera, et cetera. So as I've been doing that, I've been practicing my own eye, my pattern recognition, and I've been going back and forth over and over and putting handprints into different slideshows and eliminating examples that aren't quite as good. And as my eye has gotten more and more used to looking at hand shapes, in my readings I use hand shapes twice as much as I used to. And I always used hand shapes a lot, but now I'm using hand shapes twice as much as I used to. And it's so handy. It comes in, it is so useful, especially, let me just give a couple of examples. Let's say a person has a life purpose of Ride Apollo, live your creativity, be an individualist, say the fingerprints, and you'll find your fulfillment. Okay, that is good. And if that's all you can tell a person, find your artistry, express it, let other people see it, and have confidence that this is what it is that you came to do. That is useful information. But if you can say that you're a big ideas person, handprint 1785 is the first one we'll look at here. If you can say that the person is a big ideas person, then you can say, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, you need to bring out your big ideas into the public for your life purpose to feel fulfilled. Are you writing about your big ideas? Are you teaching about your big ideas? Are you having seminars where your big ideas reach people? Are you writing a blog about your big ideas? What are you doing with your big ideas? You can get so much more specific. Let's say a person's life purpose was right thumb, tangible, measurable results in the world, and you're talking to a big ideas person. That is really different than if you're talking to an Hephaestus person or a ballet teacher person. Those are the other two archetypes we'll talk about today. So it allows me to be so specific.
Much more specific.
Yes. And also, let's say the person's life purpose is service. They have 8, 9, 10 whirls, and they all look about the same. No whirl really catches your eye as being more advanced than the other whirl. So you tell the person that their life purpose is service, and you can listen to what they report about their life. If they're in servitude, your advice about how the soul needs to learn the difference between servitude and true service. That is very, very useful. That could be so life-altering. But if you can define more tightly what their service could be, well, you've got big ideas, Mr. or Ms. 1785, and that's where your best service is. If your big ideas are reaching the public and the public uses them to their benefit, you have reached your soul's fulfillment point. It tightens so much the life purpose. And by the same token, as you know, the good news and bad news for each of the archetypes, you can also tighten what you talk about with life lesson.
Sorry about that.
No, so I use it to tighten up. That's the overview. Should we look at 1785?
Yes. Could you just tell us now what it is that makes this big ideas?
Yes. So I'm using a combination of the Earth, Air, Fire system of Fred Gettings, and I'm using the mythological system of Benham. Now, this is clearly a Jupiter dominant hand. The index finger is a full centimeter longer than the ring finger. It's high set. It stands up really tall and is eye-catching very quickly to my eye. I look at this hand and Jupiter, Zeus, the index finger. Jupiter dominates, and if you eliminate the thumb from your consideration and just look at the palm and fingers, this hand is tall, rectangular. You have to adjust and move the little finger in just a little, and the hand would fit into a shoebox very nicely. So I picked a hand to use for illustration where it was obvious that this is a hand that belongs to air. For anybody who knows Fred Gettings' system, they would all agree, it's air. This is not a borderline gray area controversial hand. By the same token, anybody familiar with Benham's system would quickly say, a Jupiter hand. And in hand reading, it's not always as obvious as it is in this case. But I've picked an obvious case because we're just starting out taking a look. And this is the big ideas. Jupiter is ambitious, expansive, has the big picture. Zeus sits on his throne in the sky and rules his kingdom. And air is mental, the overview. Examine, analyze, figure out. This is air. So when Jupiter and air combine, we have the person who has big ideas. So I was reading for a woman just a while back, and she had a hand that looked just like this one. And so I told her she was the big ideas person, and she went, uh-huh. And she told me that what she was doing, she was writing a book about fashion, women's fashion. I say, women's fashion. That might be an interesting book, but a person with big ideas like you wants to do so much more than that. You want to change the world. She says, well, I'm talking about women's empowerment. Fashion is just a piece of it, and when women are empowered in the world today, that changes this, that changes that. I'm trying to change the whole world, she said. Well, you're being true to your archetype. She is big ideas. But at least half of the people that I read for who have big ideas as their hand type, they're working in an office someplace. Their job is very tightly and rigidly controlled, and they work inside the box. And their big ideas are not, nobody's interested in their big ideas. And for these people, life is extremely frustrating. They must find a way to bring their big ideas to the public. Look at the fate line on 1785, Jena. Look at how the fate line doubles. Strong fate line right up the middle of the hand, and below the headline, the line starts to double, and it doubles for quite an extensive length to the headline, through the headline, and above the heart line. The fate line is doubled. This is a lot of doubling on the fate line. And when the fate line is doubled, it represents that the person is putting in really hard work. And if there's a 1 centimeter doubling of the fate line, maybe there was a period of time, 10 years even, where the person worked hard. Full-time job plus writing their book, that can lead to a double fate line. But this person has 3 centimeters worth of double fate line. That's way too much, and it's most likely very problematic for the person. And the odds are very high that they're working too hard for way too little reward, and that they're working too hard not on their big ideas. They could be working too hard on somebody else's big ideas or on small ideas, in which case they're really in trouble. And you could see the horizontal that crosses on the top of the fate line, seems to stop the doubling of the fate line. And to me, this is a person who is very, very likely to have their big ideas being thwarted at the moment.
Okay, Richard. So you're putting together a course which we'll be offering in Erg School.
Correct.
And this is one of 16 archetypes. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're going to look at 16 archetypes: Jupiter, Saturn, Apollo, Mercury, plus Earth, air, fire, and water. In other words, Jupiter plus water, Jupiter plus air, Jupiter plus fire, Jupiter plus earth, etc. And I'm picking 16 easy, I'm going to say easy, more or less easy archetypes. They're easy to spot. They show up a lot. People do not need specialized knowledge in hands beyond the basic knowledge of hands. Most hand readers are familiar with the standard finger names and what it means when they're dominant, and Gettings, earth, air, fire, water is a commonly used system. We're going to look at these 16 archetypes, look at some handprints, talk about their standard behaviors, what to be on the lookout for, what they do well, and what's difficult for them.